Maybe you've been looking at life lately with a silence only you understand. It's not an empty silence, but one full of questions that go unanswered, of unmet desires, of a quiet fear that whispers at night. What if this is all there is? Just surviving? What if life is just paying bills, keeping up appearances, trying not to fail without ever truly thriving? That fear doesn't shout. It hides. It shows up in small gestures, in hesitating to dream, in discomfort watching others grow, in the weariness of fighting for little reward. It's the fear of leaving no mark, of not living with purpose, of never having time, space, or energy to create something that lasts beyond routine. But what if that hidden pain is actually guiding you toward a deeper vibrational awakening? When Psalm 23 says, "I shall not want," it's not making a vague promise. It's revealing a state, an inner state of certainty, a mind that already sees itself in possession of what it desires. Napoleon Hill called this applied faith, not merely believing, but feeling, living, and acting as if the desire is already reality. It's not about mentally repeating what you want, it's about emotionally aligning with it. True manifestation power starts where thought and the vibration of already having unites. Neville Goddard offers a complementary key. He interprets "the Lord is my shepherd" not as a religious phrase, but as a code of creation. For Neville, the shepherd is the inner I am, the imaginative consciousness that assumes the state of the fulfilled end. Because this imagined end is emotionally sustained, the path unfolds. You don't force reality, you allow it vibrationally into being. Here, we begin to redefine prosperity, not as accumulation, not as financial security born of fear, but as coherence with the source of creation. True prosperity comes into your life when you tune into the frequency that already exists, responding not to words, but to your vibration. Psalm 23, therefore, is far more than a beautiful prayer. It's a vibrational map, a symbolic code for the inner journey every human undertakes, moving from the valley of mental scarcity to the realm of spiritual legacy. It quietly invites you to expand the field where everything grows, the field of thoughts, emotions, and actions that ultimately bear fruit. "He makes me lie down in green pastures" isn't a metaphor of some distant destination. It's a declaration of internal nourishment. It's like saying, "I am fertile ground for goodness." And that fertility begins within, where no one is watching. It begins when you turn your fear into presence, your doubt into direction, your prayer into vibrant living. Today, you will not just understand the psalm, you'll feel it. You'll sense its presence as a calling, a reminder that true prosperity doesn't have to arrive. It simply needs to be released into your field, because it already lives within you, perhaps hidden, but alive, waiting for its moment to bloom. And that moment can be now. There is a kind of scarcity that doesn't show up in bank statements. It isn't about unpaid bills or visible lack of opportunities. It lives in a quieter space, much deeper. It's a scarcity that vibrates, manifesting in recurring thoughts of not being enough, in saying sacred words without soul, in continuing to ask, even when receiving seems impossible. This disconnection between what is said and what is truly felt is more common than we admit. Many of us were taught how to pray with devotion, but not how to vibrate with coherence. We've repeated holy verses like spells. But deep within, we've kept the echo of inherited beliefs. Ideas like money is dangerous, success separates, asking for too much is selfish, and shining too brightly invites harm. These beliefs rarely speak in complete sentences. They show up in discomfort with praise, difficulty accepting support, in guilt when we want more. It's a vibrational form of scarcity, unseen but deeply active. And as long as it occupies your field, the abundance promised by the psalm remains out of reach. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that valley today isn't only a physical place, it's a mental and emotional state, a silent maze of inner sabotage. It's the space where someone prays but still doubts, believes but still fears, wants but still feels unworthy. That valley is not sin. It's part of the path, but it wasn't meant to be home. It was meant to be crossed. And the crossing begins when you recognize your own vibration of lack, not to blame yourself, but to transform. Because you can only change what you see. You can only elevate what you first accept. When you realize that even in your faithful recitations, there's still the vibration of abandonment or unworthiness, that's the first step toward transmutation. This is where Psalm 23 becomes a guide, not just through its words, but through the energy it activates. It invites you to feel into the vibration behind each line, to ask yourself, what still blocks me from embodying "I shall not want"? To recognize how often the voice of lack is louder than the voice of abundance. What's often missing is not faith, but alignment. The gap between what's prayed and what's felt is where hidden scarcity lives, and it's also where abundance begins to awaken. Not from adding more effort, but from vibrating in integrity, with what you want, what you believe, and what you choose to be. There's a subtle, almost invisible belief that lives inside many who walk a spiritual path. The idea that prosperity is a kind of reward, a divine acknowledgement given only to those who have been good enough, as if abundance were a spiritual medal granted to the deserving. At first glance, this might sound harmless, but it creates a deep blockage in the vibrational flow of true prosperity. Because where there is conditional merit, there is pressure. Where there is moralized expectation, there is judgment. And where there is judgment, vibration contracts. You begin to believe you must do more, purify more, prove more, control more, in hopes that one day, maybe, you'll finally be worthy to receive. But Psalm 23 does not say, "If I'm good, I shall not want." It simply affirms, "I shall not want." Not as a reward, but as a reflection of a deeper inner trust. Napoleon Hill, with his sharp clarity, reminded us that prosperity isn't luck, it's consequence. It's the result of faith applied through disciplined action, of a mind that even in silence sustains a consistent mental image of abundance, infused with emotion. He taught that wealth doesn't begin with money, it begins with thought, charged with feeling. And that thought, nurtured consistently, becomes inspired action. And inspired action shifts the field. Psalm 23 doesn't promise anything. It describes. It describes a state of presence and trust where resistance dissolves, where there's no negotiation with the divine. The soul doesn't say, "If I sacrifice, I will be rewarded." It says, "I trust, and because I trust, I receive." Because abundance, like any form of energy, does not respond to performance. It responds to frequency. And the frequency of worthiness doesn't come from effort. It comes from the quiet recognition of your own inner value. That recognition isn't spiritual arrogance, it's vibrational maturity. It's the soul understanding that it no longer needs to beg to bloom, that it doesn't require validation to expand, that it doesn't need to suffer to feel loved by the universe. To prosper at this level is not about having. It's about being. It's about such deep coherence with the current of life that what you need arrives, not by force but by flow. So beware of the subtle trap of tying your prosperity to how much you think you deserve, or how much others say you deserve. Prosperity is not a trophy. It's a mirror. It's not given by judgment. It appears through resonance, and that changes everything. Because from that moment on, you stop policing yourself and start aligning. You stop punishing yourself and start nourishing. You stop praying for approval and begin vibrating in communion. Psalm 23 invites you to dwell in a field where what is meant for you comes, because you are already it, because you are already there, because you already vibrate it, and that already is everything. There's a quiet kind of disappointment that lives in the hearts of those who pray with faith, yet feel that nothing changes. The promise of the overflowing cup, of flowing abundance, of a life fully lived, always seems close but never quite within reach. And the longer one waits, the farther away it seems, as if there was something unseen, something unspoken, blocking the blessing from arriving. And more often than not, that something is the myth of passive deserving. Many people have adopted a belief, often disguised as faith, that all they need to do is wait. Wait for divine timing, wait to be noticed, wait for the universe to remember them. But true manifestation doesn't feed on waiting. It feeds on alignment, on active vibrational presence, on emotional coherence between what is desired and what is felt when desiring it. When the psalm says, "My cup overflows," it's not describing a divine gift handed down at random. It's describing an inner state of fullness. Overflow doesn't start on the outside, it begins within. It begins when comparison ends, when fear dissolves, when the soul not only believes but feels itself whole, complete, worthy of the very best, without guilt, without bargaining, without waiting. What many forget is that overflow is not the beginning of abundance. It is the final stage. Before that, there's internal cleansing. There's the breaking of inherited beliefs that say, "You must suffer to earn." There's the silence required to truly hear your real frequency. There's the courageous choice to walk away from what drains you and move toward what nourishes your soul. This alignment is not theoretical, it's practical. It requires decisions. It asks you to be aware of how you wake up, how you speak to yourself, how you respond to the invitations of life. Prosperity doesn't show up for those who just ask. It reveals itself to those who already vibrate as if it were here. Because it's not about having, it's about being. The overflowing cup doesn't appear through insistence. It emerges from frequency. And that frequency becomes stable when you understand that the blessing you're waiting for isn't out of reach. It's simply waiting for you to become a ready vessel, a clear field, a mind that not only desires but lives as if it is already being cared for, supported and guided. So maybe what's missing is not more prayer. Maybe what's missing is vibrationally aligned action, a daily choice to live in harmony with what you want to experience. Because the universe doesn't respond to what you say. It responds to who you are, especially when no one is watching. And your cup overflows not when water arrives from outside, but when you finally recognize that it's been pulsing quietly, inside you all along. There's a subtle moment, almost invisible, when scarcity stops being an external condition and becomes an inner language, a habitual way of thinking, feeling, expecting. And as long as that language keeps repeating in the silence of your mind, even the most sacred prayers fall flat. That's why true transformation begins within, and it begins small, through gestures so simple they're often overlooked, yet deeply powerful. To transmute scarcity is not to fight it, it's to dissolve its frequency. And to do that, we must create emotional anchors, small rituals that help the body, heart and mind remember that a different reality is possible. Not because the world has changed, but because your inner vibration has. Choose one verse from Psalm 23, any line that stirs something in you. For example, "I shall not want." Now breathe with it. Inhale while silently repeating the words. Hold the breath. Exhale slowly, letting the phrase echo inside you. Not to convince your mind, but to teach your body to feel safe again. To let every cell begin to associate those words with calm, trust, and groundedness. And slowly your field starts to shift. Now bring in imagery. Visualize, even if in a simple way, what it would feel like to live those words as real. How would you stand? How would you speak? What would your day feel like? Vibration doesn't establish itself through thought alone. It needs your senses. When you breathe, feel, and imagine all at once, you create a new vibrational signature, a kind of neurological trail that, when repeated, becomes your new normal. This is vibrational shepherding. It's not about knowing the path, but trusting you are being guided. It's the feeling of direction even without a map, and that feeling becomes so strong that it begins shaping how you act, how you respond, how you walk through your day. Micro-actions start to alter your body's electromagnetic field, and those changes invite new opportunities. Bruce Lipton reminds us that biology responds to environment, but environment is not just physical, it's vibrational. Your body, your mind, and your reality adapt to the field you sustain. So when you shift your emotional state, even for a few minutes a day, you begin rewriting your biology. You create a new internal chemistry. You open doors that were previously closed, because now your vibration matches them. This technique doesn't require much time. It requires intention, presence, conscious repetition. It's not about doing it once and waiting for a miracle. It's about creating small, consistent windows of reprogramming. Breath, imagery, affirmation, and eventually scarcity has nowhere left to live, because your inner field becomes so aligned, so fertile, that reality has no choice but to reflect it. You don't need the world to change. You only need to change the way you vibrate inside it, because everything begins in the invisible. And when you become a field of creation, scarcity fades into memory, and abundance becomes a natural reflection. Scarcity doesn't always block prosperity. Sometimes it's the fear of receiving that creates the real wall, a quiet fear that few admit out loud, but that silently shapes decisions, disguised as humility, wisdom, or even spirituality. It's the subtle worry that prosperity might come, and with it, judgment, exposure, rejection, that if you truly shine, you might lose love, that if you rise, you might rise alone. And so the soul retreats, not out of unworthiness, but out of self-protection. Many people carry this invisible break. They pray for abundance but resist it vibrationally. They fear being misunderstood, criticized, envied. They equate having more with standing apart, and standing apart with loneliness. So deep down, the subconscious chooses safety over expansion, and that choice silently sabotages the field. Here, Psalm 23 reveals something deeper. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. This isn't just about protection, it's about exposure, about being placed in a position of visibility, even under the gaze of those who do not support, understand, or celebrate you. It shows that real success doesn't emerge in the absence of pressure, it blooms under the weight of it. This line carries a profound spiritual invitation to be at peace with your light making others uncomfortable, to accept that growth may trigger someone else's wounds, that abundance might unsettle old dynamics. And still, you expand, not from defiance, but from clarity, from the quiet truth that your path isn't meant to fit into everyone else's expectations. This is the vibrational turning point, when you stop shrinking to stay loved, when you no longer hide your wisdom, your vision, your gifts just to preserve fragile bonds, when you stop denying your abundance just to make others feel safe. Because every time you dim yourself out of fear of being too much, you step away from the inheritance meant to move through you. And there's something even more powerful here. Your prosperity isn't just about you. It's a collective frequency. When you shine, you open possibilities for others. When you allow yourself to receive, you send permission into the field. Your abundance is not an individual achievement, it's a shared legacy. And legacies aren't hidden, they are embodied. So begin to gently notice where you're still holding back, where you're resisting, not because you can't have more, but because you're unsure what having more might mean. Witness those moments, honor them, and then choose to keep going, because your inheritance is already waiting. It doesn't need you to chase it, only to stop running from it. There's a quiet wisdom in the cycles of nature that we often forget. Maybe it's because we've been so conditioned by urgency, by instant gratification, by the illusion that everything should be fast and measurable. We start believing that prosperity is a straight line, that it should grow without pause, without decline, without the appearance of stillness. But nature, that sacred mirror, teaches us another rhythm. Nothing is constant, but everything is cyclical. The green pastures of Psalm 23 are not fixed destinations. They are states, phases, seasons within the flow of life. And like any garden, There is time to sow, to water, to rest, to bloom, and to be still again. When we ignore these natural rhythms, we suffer. When we expect harvests out of season, we reap frustration. But when we begin to recognize the seasons of our own inner field, abundance stops being a mystery and starts becoming a rhythm. How many times have you judged yourself for not producing, for not progressing, for not achieving? How many times have you confused stillness with failure, silence with absence, introspection with stagnation? And what if that delay was actually preparation? What if your inner field was being nourished, out of sight beneath the surface, while you thought nothing was happening? Nature never forces its own unfolding. It doesn't rush to bloom. It knows that every fruit has its time. That maturity is part of abundance. And this natural intelligence lives in you too. Your soul has a rhythm. Your vibration has seasons. And to prosper in truth is not to speed up. It is to respect the inner timing of the seeds you carry. Abundance, then, is not about acceleration. It is about coherence. It's about being at peace with the process, even when it seems invisible. It's about trusting that what has been planted in integrity will bloom. If the soil is nourished with faith, action, and patience, you can't harvest what's still germinating, but you can sustain the right vibration while it matures. So, look with tenderness at what you've been calling delay. Maybe it's not a setback, it's alignment. Maybe your field is rearranging, strengthening, cleansing itself to receive something greater. Something that couldn't have come any sooner because you weren't yet ready to hold it. Psalm 23 doesn't say the pastures will always be green. It reminds us that there is a place of rest, a place of provision, a place of divine timing where life flows again. And that place isn't somewhere outside. It's a space you enter when you learn to flow with life, not against it. And these green pastures, they never appear out of nowhere. They are the visible fruit of invisible faith, of daily alignment, of inner seasons honored and not rushed. Prosperity in its most sacred form is not about how fast you reach the dream. It's about how fully you embody the rhythm of your soul while walking toward it. Sometimes life asks us to act as if we have already received, even when everything around us says the opposite. That is the moment when faith stops being belief and becomes vibration. It becomes presence. It becomes movement. And when that inner shift happens, reality starts to respond. Not from the outside in, but from the inside out. There's a symbolic story inspired by the real experiences of those who studied Napoleon Hill's teachings that beautifully illustrates this truth. A woman, ordinary by the world's standards, extraordinary in her resilience, had spent years holding her home together, raising children, working multiple jobs, just trying to stay afloat. She knew Psalm 23 by heart. She repeated it often. But deep down, she still believed that abundance was for other people, that I shall not want was more of a hope than a lived truth. One day, in a moment of emotional exhaustion, she did something different. Instead of pleading, she decided to thank. Instead of repeating out of fear, she took a breath and quietly said, I shall not want. And in that moment, she didn't just say it. She felt it. She felt it as if it were happening now. As if there really were an invisible force holding her, guiding her, caring for her. In the days that followed, nothing drastic changed, but something began to shift. A phone call came. A new opportunity opened up. Someone offered help she hadn't expected. More than that, she noticed herself changing. She was calmer, more grounded. She started making clearer choices, taking braver steps, saying no where she once said yes. The field around her was rearranging, but only because the field within her had already shifted. This story isn't here to suggest that one moment of feeling changes everything overnight, but it shows a deeper principle. The overflow doesn't happen because life becomes easier. It happens because the vision remains intact, even when nothing yet confirms it. True abundance isn't the absence of challenge, it's the presence of vision, despite the challenge. It's the quiet, consistent decision to feel as if the answer is already here, And when that vibration is sustained, even in small ways, it rewires everything, not just for the person living it, but for those who come after. Small acts of vibrational courage change family lines. They rewrite inner blueprints. They open doors that were locked for generations. Because what you heal, what you choose, what you embody, becomes legacy. This is the sacred power of Psalm 23. It is not just a comfort in hard times, it is a frequency for the future. Every time you live it, not just recite it, you're teaching, through your presence, that abundance is real, that "I shall not want" is not wishful thinking. It is a frequency, and when it's embodied with truth, it transforms everything around it, quietly, powerfully, permanently. True prosperity doesn't end when you accumulate things. It begins when your internal state remains abundant, even in the midst of uncertainty. Real prosperity is not about appearances. It's about a presence, a quiet frequency that says, "I know I am supported. I know I am guided. I know that nothing essential is ever missing." This kind of abundance doesn't show itself in numbers. It reveals itself in how you walk, how you choose, how you breathe. Napoleon Hill taught that the greatest inheritance is not material. It's mental, it's vibrational. The true legacy you leave behind is not in what you own, but in the states of being you've mastered and modeled. It's in the inner frequency you teach others to hold, through your actions, your decisions, your presence. Bruce Lipton confirms this at the cellular level. Your vibration alters gene expression. Your inner state, how you think, how you feel, becomes the signal your biology responds to, which means your prosperity doesn't end with you. It echoes biologically, emotionally, energetically into future generations. What you align with now, your children and grandchildren will feel, even if they never fully understand why. And so we return to the final line of Psalm 23, "I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." This isn't just about a place, it's about a state, a permanent vibrational home, a place within you where you no longer fear lack, no longer doubt your worth, no longer question whether you're cared for. To dwell is to live rooted. It's to choose coherence. It's to decide that no matter what happens around you, you know where you stand and with whom. This house of abundance, it moves with you. You don't visit it on weekends. You don't access it only when things go well. You become it. And that's what no external crisis can take away. So now, at this final turning point, the invitation becomes deeply personal. Stop reciting the psalm. Start embodying it. Don't just say, "I shall not want." Walk like someone who knows they already have. Don't just declare "Wastis, he restores my soul." Live like someone whose soul is already full. Don't just wait for your cup to overflow. Feel it overflowing right now, and let that feeling guide your next step. Because the psalm isn't just a prayer, it's a vibrational blueprint. It's a map for a state of being that transcends external conditions. It is not for the lucky, it is for the ready, for the aligned, for the present. And once you truly become that vibration, everything changes. Not because the world finally delivered what you wanted, but because you finally remembered that it was never outside of you to begin with. It was waiting, quietly, patiently, in the house you now choose to dwell in forever.